The snow fell thick that morning, swallowing the small town street in white silence. The roar of motorcycle engines cut through the stillness as a group of bikers rolled in, their leather jackets marked with the emblem Iron Wolves MC. They were rough men, the kind you'd expect to see in bar fights, not in quiet neighborhoods. But that day, as they slowed near an old corner store, something caught their eyes. A little girl, no more than 8, shivering by a lamppost. Her tiny hands clutched a small tray covered with plastic wrap. Inside were a few broken cookies. She looked up with red cheeks and trembling lips and whispered, "Buy my cookies, sir. Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." The leader of the group, a tall man with ocean blue eyes named Cole, cut his engine and removed his helmet. The girl's voice was fragile, yet it hit him harder than the cold wind. He glanced at his men, and they all looked back with the same uneasy silence. Cole knelt, noticing her fingers were purple from the cold. He asked where her mother was, but she only pointed down the street toward a dark alley. The bikers followed her gaze and saw a flicker of light from a broken window. Cole handed her a few dollars and took one of the cookies, but his gut told him this was more than hunger. It was pain. When she smiled faintly, it wasn't the smile of a child. It was the weary smile of someone who had seen too much. As the bikers exchanged glances, the snow thickened, covering their boots. Cole whispered to his crew, "Boys, we're not leaving yet." Something about that little girl's eyes told him a story was buried here, and it was darker than the storm above them. The bikers followed the little girl through the thick snow, their boots crunching as the wind howled through the alleyways. She led them to a small, run-down house at the edge of the street, its windows sealed with old cardboard, smoke faintly rising from a Mel bucket near the door. Cole pushed the door open and was hit with the scent of damp clothes and sickness. On a thin mattress in the corner lay a frail woman, coughing weakly under a tattered blanket. Her eyes opened slowly, fear flickering across them as she saw the group of leather-clad strangers enter her home. The little girl rushed to her side, clutching her hand tightly. "Mommy, they bought the cookies," she said softly.
Cole knelt beside the woman, his blue eyes softening as he noticed the empty pill bottles scattered across the floor. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. Between coughs, she thanked them, embarrassed by her state. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances. These were men who had seen violence, loss, and blood, but the quiet suffering in that room felt heavier than all of it. Cole asked what happened to them, how things got so bad. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "They took everything," she murmured. "The company my husband worked for, they stole his pension, his health, his hope. Then he died." A deep silence filled the room. One of the bikers, Tank, clenched his fists. He'd heard about that company before, Raven Tech Industries, owned by a man who'd built his empire by crushing small workers. Cole's jaw tightened as realization sank in. This wasn't just a story about hunger. It was about greed, betrayal, and the kind of injustice that left families in the cold. He stood, pulling off his jacket and wrapping it around the girl's shoulders. "You and your mom won't sleep hungry again," he said quietly. But in his mind, he'd already made a vow. Someone was going to pay for this. The next morning, the snow had stopped, but the cold still bit deep. Cole and his crew gathered in the diner across the street from the little house. None of them touched their coffee. The image of that starving child and her sick mother wouldn't leave their minds. Tank tapped the table impatiently. "So, what's the plan, boss?" Cole's gaze was locked on the window, watching the thin trail of smoke rise from the old house. "We find out who took everything from him," he said, his voice low but steady. An hour later, they began digging. Bikers might look rough, but they had networks that stretched across towns, mechanics, truckers, and former soldiers who heard things. It didn't take long before a name surfaced:
Ethan Grayson, CEO of Raventech Industries. Cole's blood boiled when he read the report. Grayson had been accused of embezzling funds meant for workers' medical benefits, forcing hundreds of families into poverty before covering it all up. The girl's father had been one of the casualties. Cole slammed the paper on the counter. "He's the one," he growled. The rest of the bikers nodded silently, their loyalty as cold and solid as steel. By evening, they were riding toward the glass tower that bore the Raventech logo. The contrast was painful. The golden lights of wealth glowing above, while the woman and her daughter froze below. When they reached the entrance, the guards tried to stop them, but one look into Cole's eyes made them step aside. They entered the marble lobby, the air thick with luxury and lies. Cole walked straight to the front desk. "Tell Ethan Grayson the Iron Wolves are here," he said firmly. His tone was calm, but every word carried a storm. This wasn't just business anymore, it was justice, and tonight, the wolves were hunting. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. The polished metal walls reflected the faces of the bikers, men hardened by life, but burning with a quiet fury. When the doors opened, Ethan Grayson was standing by the window of his office watching the city like a king surveying his land. His suit was spotless, his smile cold. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he asked. Cole stepped forward, his ocean blue eyes piercing through the man's arrogance. "You already did enough," he said. "We met a little girl selling cookies in the snow so her mother could eat. Her father worked for you." For the first time, Grayson's face twitched. He adjusted his tie but didn't speak. Cole threw a file on the desk, papers showing missing pension funds, fake signatures, and evidence of his theft. "You stole their lives," Cole said quietly. "Now you're going to give them back." The office went still. Grayson's voice cracked as he stammered an excuse about business decisions and economic shifts. But the bikers didn't want words. They wanted truth. Cole leaned in close and whispered, "You sleep in warmth while families freeze. That ends tonight." Later that evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, a black SUV stopped outside the small house beyond the alley. Inside were groceries, medicine, and a thick envelope filled with money, enough to start over. The little girl ran out barefoot in the snow, her smile wide as she saw Cole standing there beside his bike. "Mommy can eat tonight," she said joyfully. Cole knelt and handed her his leather gloves. "No more cold for you, little one." As the bikers rode off into the fading light, their engines echoed like thunder rolling away. They didn't just save a family that day. They redeemed their own broken pasts by fighting for someone who had nothing. If you believe kindness can still change lives, share this story to remind the world that mercy is louder than greed. And remember to like and subscribe for more wholesome videos like these.